Hello everyone. Have you ever sat across from someone, maybe at your own dinner table, and felt a strange stillness behind their smile? She laughs at your jokes, she touches your arm, she says all the right things, yet somewhere deep inside, a quiet alarm goes off. You can't explain it. It's not the kind of danger you see in movies. It's more subtle, more intimate. The way she remembers only the things that make you doubt yourself. The way her warmth feels conditional, like it's on loan and can be taken back at any moment. Evil doesn't always come with a twisted grin or a public betrayal. Sometimes it arrives dressed as love. Sometimes it learns the map of your heart before it decides where to strike. And by the time you realize something is wrong, she's already woven herself so tightly into your life that pulling away feels like losing a part of yourself. This isn't about paranoia, it's about awareness. Because an evil woman isn't just someone who hurts you, she's someone who does it in ways you don't see coming. And if you've ever wondered why you feel drained, silenced, or smaller when you're supposed to feel loved, then you might already be standing next to her. You know, love has this strange way of making us blind to the things that are right in front of us. We think love is about trust, about giving someone the benefit of the doubt, about holding on even when it's hard. And that's beautiful until it becomes dangerous. Because sometimes the very person you've opened your heart to is the one quietly chipping away at it. I want you to picture this. You're in a relationship where on the surface, everything seems fine. Friends see the two of you together and comment on how lucky you are. She's charming when people are watching. She says, "I love you," in the right moments. She knows your favorite coffee order, remembers your big presentation at work, and kisses you before you leave the house. From the outside, it looks like devotion. But on the inside, you feel smaller, quieter, less sure of yourself. Like every day, without even realizing it, you're giving up little pieces of who you are just to keep the peace. That's the thing about an evil woman. She doesn't just walk in and flip your life upside down overnight. No, she takes her time. She learns your rhythms, your weaknesses, your insecurities, and then she uses them in ways that make you question if you're imagining things. That's why awareness matters. Because the signs are there, but they are often dressed in such convincing disguises that by the time you see them, you've already been entangled. The first sign is subtle but powerful. She thrives on making you doubt yourself. It's not always in big, obvious ways. Sometimes it's as simple as the way she responds when you share an idea. You tell her about a project you're excited to start, and she tilts her head, gives a small smile, and says, "Are you sure that's really something you can pull off?" Or you talk about your achievements, and instead of celebrating, she finds a way to poke a hole in it, a quiet reminder that you're never quite enough. This is not constructive criticism. This is erosion. It's the slow, deliberate chipping away of your confidence until you start second, guessing every decision, every instinct. An evil woman doesn't have to scream to control you. She just has to plant enough seeds of doubt that you begin to do the work for her. You start questioning your worth, your judgment, your right to take up space. And when you do that, she doesn't have to clip your wings, you'll fold them yourself. The danger here is that, over time, this doubt starts to feel normal. You stop noticing the little jabs, the constant undercurrent of criticism because you've adapted. But make no mistake, this is how control works. If you catch yourself thinking, maybe I am overreacting, maybe I am not as capable as I thought, ask yourself where those thoughts are coming from. They may not be yours. The second sign is a little darker. She uses intimacy as a weapon, not as a bridge. In a healthy relationship, intimacy, whether emotional or physical, is a space of connection. It's where you feel seen, wanted, safe. But with an evil woman, intimacy becomes currency. It's given when you've pleased her and withheld when you've displeased her. It's no longer an expression of love, it's a means of control. Maybe she turns cold and distant after an argument, refusing to touch you, to kiss you, to even look at you in the way she once did, not because she's hurt, but because she knows the silence will punish you. Or perhaps she does the opposite. She floods you with affection right after hurting you, making you feel confused, off balance, unsure which version of her is real. This cycle of push and pull is intoxicating. Addictive even. You crave her warmth, so you work harder to avoid her cold. You think you're trying to keep the relationship alive, but in reality, you're just trying to avoid being starved of love. Here's what makes it even more dangerous. This kind of intimacy control rewires your brain. You start associating her approval with your worth. You begin to measure your value based on whether she is being loving or withholding. And that's exactly how she keeps you tethered. Not with chains, but with your own longing. I've sat across from countless men in my therapy room who tell me they stayed for years in relationships where love felt like a negotiation. They weren't just in love. They were in survival mode, always on guard, always trying to read her moods, to preempt the next withdrawal of affection. And over time, this doesn't just hurt your heart, it damages your sense of self. This is why recognizing these signs early matters. Because the moment you start accepting doubt as normal, or treating love like something you have to earn through obedience, you've already begun to lose yourself. And the most chilling part, An evil woman will convince you that it's all your fault, that she withholds because you're not doing enough, that she questions you because she cares, that you're lucky she's even still here, despite how difficult you are. It's a narrative she repeats until you start to believe it. So, if you felt that knowing in your gut, that uneasy sense that love has started to feel more like a performance than a safe place, don't dismiss it. It's not weakness to notice, it's strength. Because awareness is the first crack in her control. It's strange, isn't it? How the human mind can adapt to almost anything if it happens slowly enough. You can go from feeling like yourself, confident, grounded, sure of your place in the world, to feeling like a shadow of that person without even noticing the gradual slide. And when you're with an evil woman, that slide isn't an accident. It's a strategy. The third sign is this: she isolates you from the people who love you. Now, she doesn't usually do this by telling you outright, I don't want you to see your friends or family. No, that would be too obvious, too easy to spot. Instead, it comes wrapped in concern, wrapped in subtle suggestions. She might say, I just don't think your friends have your best interests at heart, or your family doesn't really understand us. At first, you think she's being protective. You think, wow, she really cares about me. She wants to make sure I'm not influenced by negativity. But over time, you notice a pattern. Every time you want to spend time with someone who's known you longer than she has, there's friction. Maybe she sulks. Maybe she starts a fight before you go out, leaving you distracted and guilty the whole time you're away. Maybe she floods you with affection when you cancel plans with someone else, training you to associate withdrawal from your support system with her approval. Why is this so dangerous? Because connection with others is oxygen. Your friends and family, the people who have loved you before she ever arrived, are mirrors that reflect back who you are. They remind you of your worth, your history, your identity. And when those mirrors are removed, you start to lose sight of yourself. You begin to live entirely inside her version of reality. And in her version, she's the center of your universe and the gatekeeper to your sense of belonging. I've seen men in my office who haven't called their brothers in years, who have let friendships fade, who can't even remember the last time they had dinner with their parents without her there. They say, it's just easier this way, less conflict. But that ease is the price of your independence. And once you've paid it, she owns more than your time. She owns your voice. The fourth sign is one of the most exhausting. She rewrites history to make herself the victim, no matter what happens. With an evil woman, the past is never fixed. It's a living document that she edits whenever it suits her needs. You could have an argument where she says something cruel, something that cuts deep. Days later, when you bring it up, she swears she never said it, or insists you misunderstood her completely. She might even flip it, telling you that you were the one who said hurtful things and she was just defending herself. This rewriting doesn't just happen in arguments. It can happen with memories you once shared. Maybe you remember a trip you both took and recall a moment where she was distant or cold. She'll tell you you're imagining it, that the trip was perfect, that you're being overly sensitive. Over time, this constant gaslighting wears you down until you no longer trust your own memory. You begin to think, maybe I am too sensitive, maybe I do misremember things, maybe she's right. And that's the goal. If she can make you doubt your version of reality, she can replace it with hers. She becomes the narrator of your life, and you're just the character moving through it. This is where the damage becomes deep, because when you lose faith in your own mind, you become dependent on hers. I once worked with a man who told me his ex could recount every argument they'd ever had, but always in a way that absolved her of any wrongdoing. It was as if she carried a mental highlighter, emphasizing only the moments that made her look wounded and erasing the ones where she held the knife. And because he loved her, because he wanted to believe in her goodness, he accepted her version over his own. By the time he realized how distorted it all was, he no longer recognized the man he used to be. This isn't just manipulation, it's psychological colonization. She takes over the territory of your mind, plants her flag, and tells you it's always been hers. And if you're not careful, you'll start defending her version of the story even to yourself. When you combine these two signs, isolation and rewriting history, you get a dangerous mix. She cuts you off from outside perspectives and then feeds you her edited version of reality. Without other voices to check it against, her narrative becomes the only one you hear. And if that narrative paints her as the victim and you as the problem, you'll start to live as if it's true. And here's the hardest part. Leaving a woman like this isn't just about walking away from a relationship. It's about reclaiming your sense of reality. It's about reconnecting with the people you've drifted from. It's about trusting your own memory again, your own gut, your own truth. That's not easy work. It takes time. It takes courage. But it starts with naming what's happening for what it is. When a woman has already managed to separate you from the people who see you clearly, when she's rewritten the past so convincingly that you hesitate to trust your own memory, there's a dangerous quiet that sets in. You begin living inside her emotional weather system, always checking the forecast before you speak, before you act, before you even think about what you want. That's when the fifth sign often appears. She turns your vulnerabilities into weapons. We all have soft spots. Maybe it's the way you worry you're not successful enough. Maybe it's the way you still carry a wound from your childhood, something about your father's absence or your mother's criticism. Maybe it's a mistake you made years ago that you've worked hard to outgrow. In a healthy relationship, those vulnerabilities become places where love can grow deeper, where your partner can show you tenderness, safety, and understanding. But with an evil woman, your vulnerabilities are not sacred ground, they're ammunition. She collects them like a hunter gathers arrows, storing them for the moments she wants to pierce you deepest. She might bring up that insecurity about your career during an argument, just to knock you off balance. She might joke about your weight in front of friends, knowing it will sting, then accuse you of being too sensitive when you react. She might remind you of your past mistakes, not to help you grow, but to keep you in a place of guilt, to make you feel like you owe her more patience, more concessions, more of yourself. The cruelty here is that you trusted her with these parts of you. You let her in. You believed she'd hold those truths with care. And instead, she turned them into tools to keep you small. I've watched men in my practice carry a quiet shame about this, as if the betrayal of having their secrets used against them somehow meant they were weak. But it's not weakness to be open. It's not weakness to love. It's only weakness to keep pretending it's love when it's clearly something else. And this leads to the sixth sign. She thrives on chaos, especially emotional chaos. In a balanced relationship, stability is the goal. Yes, there are ups and downs. We are human, after all. But overall, the bond is a source of grounding, not constant turbulence. With an evil woman, stability is almost boring to her. She needs drama to feed on. She needs tension, confusion, uncertainty, because those states give her more control over the emotional tone of the relationship. You might notice how calm moments don't last. If things are peaceful for too long, she'll find something to be upset about. Maybe she accuses you of being distant. Maybe she suddenly brings up an old disagreement that you thought was resolved. Maybe she starts a fight right before a happy occasion, like a family gathering or a trip, ensuring the atmosphere shifts to her advantage. Why? Because chaos is a form of domination. When you're caught in a storm, your focus narrows to surviving it. You're too busy trying to soothe her, to apologize, to fix whatever she stirred up, to notice how much power you've handed over in the process. And she knows this. On some level, she knows that if she keeps you in a state of constant emotional firefighting, you'll have less energy to reflect, to challenge her, to imagine life without her. You'll start to believe that this cycle of conflict and reconciliation is just how relationships are. But that's the thing, she's training you. She's conditioning you to accept instability as normal, even addictive, because those reconciliations after the fights, they can be intoxicating. They can feel like falling in love all over again. The highs are so high that you forget how low the lows have been. And so, the cycle continues. This pattern is especially dangerous because it starts to reshape your sense of self-worth. You begin to see yourself as someone who can endure this kind of volatility, someone who's strong enough to handle her moods. But that's not strength, that's survival. True strength is knowing you don't have to live in a constant state of emergency to prove your love. I remember working with a man who described it perfectly. He said, it's like she was the fire and the firefighter. She'd set something ablaze in our relationship, then rush in to save it, and I'd be so grateful that I'd forget she was the one who struck the match. That's the paradox of the chaos bringer. She gets to be both the villain and the hero in your story. And the longer you stay, the more you start to see her as the only one who can calm the very storm she creates. If you found yourself walking on eggshells, afraid to speak your mind because you never know what will ignite the next explosion, if you've caught yourself apologizing for things you didn't do, just to keep the peace, if you've felt that exhaustion of living on constant high alert, then you've experienced this kind of chaos. And here's the truth you might not want to hear yet. Love is not supposed to feel like this. Yes, relationships require effort. Yes, they involve compromise and hard conversations. But love should not leave you feeling like a soldier in an endless war, never sure if the next moment will bring peace or battle. An evil woman uses chaos the way a magician uses distraction, not just to confuse you, but to keep your eyes off what she's really doing. And what she's really doing is making herself the center of your emotional universe. If she can keep you spinning in her orbit, you won't notice how far you've drifted from your own center. By the time you've endured the isolation, the rewriting of history, the weaponizing of your vulnerabilities, and the constant storms of chaos, something inside you starts to shift. You may not even realize it at first. You laugh less, you speak less, you think twice before sharing anything that truly matters to you. And in that shrinking, in that quiet withdrawal from yourself, she finds even more room to move. This is where the seventh sign often emerges. She manipulates through guilt and obligation. In the beginning, her affection may have felt like a gift, but now it feels more like a debt. You find yourself doing things not because you want to, but because you're afraid of what it will cost you if you don't. She might say things like, after everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me. Or, I gave up so much for you, and you can't even do this one thing. It's not about mutual care anymore. It's about keeping score. Every nice thing she's ever done, every sacrifice she claims to have made, becomes a weapon in her arsenal. Proof that you owe her. Proof that you should silence your needs to repay her generosity. And here's where it gets even more twisted. Sometimes the sacrifices she reminds you of were never really for you at all. They might have been choices she made for her own benefit, reframed later as selfless acts so she can use them to control you. She might say, I could have been with someone who treated me better, but I chose you. Or, I stayed when no one else would have. Statements like these aren't meant to celebrate loyalty. They're meant to trap you in it. The guilt works because it plays on your integrity. You don't want to be the person who forgets kindness, who takes love for granted. She knows that. So she crafts a version of the story where you're the ungrateful one, the selfish one, the one who always takes and never gives. And slowly you start giving more. Not because you want to, but because you're trying to erase the shame she's planted in you. But there's a darker layer to this guilt. It makes you start to believe that your needs are a burden. That asking for understanding or space or basic respect is somehow taking too much from her. And when you start believing that, she doesn't even have to say the words anymore. You'll censor yourself. You'll hold your tongue. You'll hand her the control without her having to reach for it. And then, there's the eighth sign, perhaps the most insidious of them all. She drains your sense of self until you forget who you are without her. At this stage, it's not just about controlling your actions or your choices. It's about reshaping your identity so thoroughly that you can't imagine life beyond her. She doesn't just want you dependent on her for affection. She wants you dependent on her for your sense of worth, your definition of love, your very understanding of who you are. You might notice how your hobbies, your friendships, even your personal goals have faded. Things you used to love don't hold the same joy because she's either criticized them, dismissed them, or made you feel guilty for prioritizing them. She becomes the filter through which all your decisions pass. What will she think? How will she react? Will this make her upset? Over time, you stop asking yourself what you want altogether. Your life becomes about maintaining hers, her moods, her desires, her comfort. And here's the thing, when someone succeeds in making you live entirely in response to them, they don't have to worry about you walking away. You've lost the roadmap back to yourself. This is what makes breaking free from an evil woman so difficult. It's not just the fear of losing her. It's the fear of facing the emptiness where your own identity used to be. I've seen men stay for years, even decades, not because they didn't know something was wrong, but because they no longer knew who they were without her shadow falling over them. And here's the cruelest part. If you do try to leave, she might switch tactics. Suddenly she's sweet again. She's nostalgic. She reminds you of the good times, the magic you once had. She promises to change, to listen, to love you the way you've always wanted. And for a moment you might believe her, because deep down, you still remember the woman you fell in love with, the version of her that wasn't yet revealed to be a mask. But that's the trap. She can play the part of the perfect partner long enough to reel you back in, knowing that once you've returned, the cycle will resume. The control, the chaos, the guilt, they all find their way back, because at her core, this isn't about love, it's about power. Recognizing these last two signs, the manipulation through guilt and the erasure of your identity, is often the breaking point for the men who finally leave. It's when they realize that love should never make you feel like a debtor, and it should never require you to disappear in order to sustain it. If you're hearing this and seeing yourself in it, I want you to know something important. Reclaiming yourself is possible. It's hard, it's messy, but it's possible. The first step isn't confrontation, it's clarity. It's naming what's happening without minimizing it, without excusing it, without telling yourself it's just the way she is. Because when you start to see the patterns clearly, they lose some of their power. And when you start remembering who you were before her, you begin to rebuild the version of yourself who can stand on his own again. You know, when we talk about evil, it's easy to picture it as something dramatic, a clear villain, a moment you can point to and say, that's when it happened. But in love, evil often wears softer colors. It comes as a whisper instead of a scream, a slow drip instead of a flood. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Because by the time you realize it's been shaping your life, it's already woven into your daily rhythm. We've walked through these 8 signs together, the doubt she plants in your mind, the way she controls intimacy, the isolation from your support system, the rewriting of history, the weaponizing of your vulnerabilities, the addiction to chaos, the manipulation through guilt, and the erosion of your identity. Each one of these, on its own, can be damaging. But together, they form something much more powerful, a net. A net that doesn't just keep you close, it keeps you caught. And here's the thing about nets from inside them. It's hard to see the spaces between the threads. You get used to the shape, the limits, the boundaries. You convince yourself that the net is the whole world. If you've been living in that net, I want you to hear this. The man you were before her still exists. He might be quiet now. He might be buried under years of self-doubt, guilt, and exhaustion. But he's not gone. He's been waiting for you to notice him again. Waiting for you to remember what it feels like to laugh without permission, to speak without rehearsing, to stand without leaning on someone else for balance. The truth is, leaving a woman like this, or even just setting boundaries with her, is not about punishing her. It's about rescuing yourself. It's about saying, I deserve a love that builds me, not one that bleeds me. And that's not selfish, that's survival. But I also know this, leaving is not as simple as packing a bag and walking out the door. It means facing the parts of yourself that stayed, that tolerated, that tried to fix something that was never yours to fix. It means grieving the relationship you thought you had, the person you hoped she would be. And grief, even for something toxic, can be heavy. I've seen men go back, not because they didn't know it was wrong, but because the silence after leaving felt too big. They missed the familiarity, even if it hurt. That's why you have to prepare for what comes after. You have to rebuild the parts of your life she convinced you didn't matter. Your friendships, your hobbies, your dreams. You have to reconnect with the people who remember you in your fullness, who can reflect back the man you are without her shadow in the way. And here's something important. You will feel moments of doubt. You will hear her voice in your head telling you that you're overreacting, that you'll never find someone like her again, that you're throwing away something rare. That's not the voice of truth. That's the echo of her control. And like any echo, it fades the farther you walk from its source. You might also find yourself questioning, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm the problem? This is where you have to anchor yourself in reality. Go back to the signs. Look at them clearly. Ask yourself if love should ever require you to become less of who you are. If the answer is no, and it always is, then you know you're not wrong. The process of reclaiming yourself after this kind of relationship is like coming out of a long winter. At first, the sunlight feels strange on your skin. The colors feel too bright. The quiet feels almost threatening. But slowly you start to thaw. You start to feel pieces of yourself returning. A laugh that feels like your own. A decision made without second guessing. A moment of peace that isn't interrupted by her moods. And here's where I want you to pay attention. That peace is the thing you've been missing all along. Not the highs after the chaos. Not the temporary warmth after the cold shoulder. Real peace. The kind that doesn't need to be earned. That doesn't vanish when you say no. That doesn't punish you for having needs. I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine sitting in a cafe alone, with no phone buzzing in your pocket, no dread about the conversation waiting for you at home. You're just there, drinking your coffee, watching the world go by, and in that moment, you realize you belong to yourself again. That's the moment you know you've made it through. You are not here to be anyone's project, anyone's possession, or anyone's punching bag. You are here to love and be loved in a way that makes you more of yourself, not less. And if that means walking away from someone who refuses to love you that way, then walking away is not the end. It's the beginning. Some of you watching this will feel a tightness in your chest right now, because you know this isn't just a video. This is your life. You're hearing your own story in my words, and maybe you've been waiting for a sign, a push, a permission slip to finally do what you've known you needed to do. Let this be it. You don't need to stay in a love that costs you your voice, your peace, your joy. You don't need to explain your worth to someone who benefits from you forgetting it. And you certainly don't need to spend another year, another month, another day living in the shadow of someone who calls it love while keeping you on your knees. You have one life. One. And every day you spend with an evil woman is a day you could be spending rebuilding yourself, finding someone who sees you, or simply enjoying the freedom of your own company. So I'll leave you with this. If you recognize these signs, start making the small moves that will lead you back to yourself. Call the friend you stopped talking to. Take the drive you've been putting off. Sit in a room without her voice filling it and notice how it feels. Every step you take away from her is a step toward the man you were always meant to be. And when you get there, when you stand in that sunlight again, you'll understand something you might not be able to see from here. You were never too much. You were never too sensitive. You were never hard to love. You were just with someone who wanted you to believe you were, so she could keep you where she wanted you. Love is not meant to hurt like that. And the day you believe that, truly believe it, is the day her power over you ends.